some people are very uncomfortable to talk about the spirituality when it can't be tested. Let go of the struggle.
Yeah.
Realise that you're a multifaceted person with different drives and passions in your life. Science is the pursuit of knowledge and truth.
Yeah.
And surely that's what your faith is. God is truth. And so what God ends up being is part of the journey. A worry that I had to give up my faith. Did I know whether God existed or not? What was the evidence? And then I came to a place that actually I don't know.
So this is the first episode of a series I'm running called Lend Me Your Fears, where I try and delve deep with people about certain vulnerabilities in their life, all with the overarching aim of showing that we're all human and we all struggle with things. But at the end of the day, I think we're all grasping for truth. So I'm here today with
Dr. John Preston.
And tell us a little bit about you.
I am a marine biologist.
Yeah.
I'm a lecturer at the University of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And my area of scientific research and interest is what's called molecular ecology and evolution. And that means that you use patterns in DNA to understand the processes around you in the natural world. For example, how things evolve, what's related to what's happened to a population, and that goes into a lot of conservation and restoration work, particularly with, in this area, the native oyster, restoration of that. So ecology and evolution within marine environment is the area that I am most interested in.
Okay, so evolution is something that has been seen over time to be somewhat threatening to perhaps a fundamentalist idea of Christianity, which is that, creation happened in 7 days, which some feel doesn't really allow for the idea of evolution. A lot of Christians don't feel that way, but still this kind of scientific problem has arisen that seems to challenge the role of faith as having a kind of hegemony over the truth of our creation. So how have you reconciled that?
So in many ways. So first of all, I would say that the creation story is a story that points to a truth, a story that could only be told within the realms of humans' understanding about how the world worked. At that point, they didn't even know the world was round. They didn't know really the existence about other planets. They didn't know about DNA. They didn't know how, really, what was the science and the sort of biology behind babies being born. So we knew so little in so many ways, and so we needed to use stories to explain the fundamentals, truths around us. And so for me, I feel like the creation of the world story is a story that holds a truth that was written at a time that mirrors the understanding of humanity at that time.
What is that truth for you?
That's something I'm still working out. So I guess the fundamental truth behind the creation story was a progression from light, from dark to light, and then a progression of animals and people and then humanity, which actually probably mirrors, in a way, the Big Bang and the progression of evolution, and then humans only came along relatively recently, 400,000 years ago.
What is the relationship between your faith and your profession or your passion?
There's something that have run alongside each other, sometimes difficult to reconcile, sometimes conflicting, sometimes quite painful, but fundamentally my spiritual journey is a search for truth, and science is a search for truth. So they completely complement to me. And sometimes that can be very challenging to the beliefs I have at the time, but that is what I embrace, because fundamentally I want to discover as much about the reality of being human, why we're here, what drives processes of evolution, what drives the human mind and heart and soul, the essence of being human. That is what I want to find out more about. So therefore, the search for truth underpins it all. So I have come to accept the fact that if that search for truth takes me to a point when I don't longer believe there is a God, then that is a valid outcome for me. It would be arrogant for me, I feel it would be arrogant for me to say either way.
You do say either way. In your faith, you say one way.
No,
do you not?
No, I hold both.
Okay, how does that work?
Sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's confusing, but I don't reject God, but I wouldn't say I know absolutely there is God.
Yeah.
because I don't know either way.
Yeah, sure.
But what I do have is, for me, in many ways, the Sermon on the Mount and what Jesus was and what he said speaks so much to me about what it is to be human and where I would want our world to go, that explains, and I don't always know why or how, a deep truth to me. And so whether that means that there is a omnipotent God in the way that people understood it, I don't know. But at the moment, I also know that there's so many progressions in different areas of science that we are undoing our thinking on a daily basis. So I would say for me, it would be an arrogance to put myself either side.
Yeah.
But so I hold them together.
Why do you think science is perceived by so many to be the answer that faith isn't? Like, why do so many perceive and struggle with the idea of Christian scientists such as yourself?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because of this dualistic thinking. You believe in God or you don't. It's black and white, other, I, other. And actually, just because you understand one process doesn't necessarily mean it rejects another process.
Yeah.
And so I think there is also been a very binary, typically male approach, and in a way, when Darwin struggled with this and he rejected Christianity, then he sort of did a U-turn right at the end and sort of accepted it again because it was so dangerous to the thoughts and the minds of the time. It was so challenging. So in a way, for science to progress, they had to throw so much of fundamental Christianity out to enable science to progress because it was so limiting to the thoughts. Right. So they limited their thoughts so much. So they had to sort of break out of that so they could discover DNA and look into the stars and discover the Big Bang. Because if you thought, oh no, God created the world, then that's the end of your progression. That's the end of your development.
Perhaps the throwing away of that kind of fundamentalist Christian domination, the legacy of that is what we still see today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a slight undertones that there's a stupidity about Christianity within scientists because, especially coming from sort of creationists and sort of stories that are written down that have been rejected or disproved by geology. But what they are doing is sort of, in a way, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They are throwing away so much of the spirituality within themselves, and there is a shift back towards this, of looking at the universe and our position in a slightly more holistic way, that they're actually, so many things are intertwined in a way that we don't understand yet.
Right.
So I think sometimes there is a pendulum swing, and for enable things to happen, you have to go one way and then the other.
Great, thank you. Cheers.